Bring it ahead. Can we get this man a latte or a Cosmo? What would
An affogato would be nice if he got some vanilla ice cream.
Yeah, well, maybe so. I think if you snap your fingers, we've got a lot of Pete's folks here. So, Congressman, I sort of started out in a way, making a point, which is that there are these detailed policy issues that are tough nuts to crack. You're not going to hear much about them in debates. And there's a gap. A friend of mine, Ryan Grimm, from Huffington Post. I'm not calling you because you're talking and ignoring me, but Ryan is the champion of taking nuggets of policy issues that have, almost deeply moral questions attached to them and elevating them when the debates are pretty vapid. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to talk about what's missing. Hey, folks, in the back, Michael Bloom. Yeah, hi, Ori. I was just going to call out, he's Heritage Foundation over there. What policy issues are we not getting at now in our debate about who should be the next president that you think are vital?
Well, I think the issue of cybersecurity and privacy hasn't really been addressed. I think the issue of encryption is going to be the dominant national security issue of 2016. This notion.
Chris Christie seems to talk about that a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, he thinks we ought not to worry about privacy and have a lot more cyber invasion. Are you on the same page?
I am not. I think we can we have to protect our civil liberties, and we can protect our digital infrastructure at the same time. And this
so you're sort of more Rand Paul?
I would probably, I think Rand Paul and I probably see more eye to eye on this topic. Trying to build back doors to encryption is silly. It doesn't work. My background is in computer science. I got a degree in computer science. I did some offensive cyber operations when I was in the CIA. And
what does that mean, offensive cyber? Were you the Stuxnet dude?
No. Yeah? Let's just say I'll probably never be invited to Moscow anytime soon. So,
wow.
And I'm not too concerned with that.
So you mentioned the CIA. What was that like?
It was a great job. It was. I started when I was 22. I was the dude in the back alleys at 4 o'clock in the morning, collecting intelligence on threats to the homeland. I spent 2 years here in Washington, D.C., 2 years in India, 2 years in Pakistan, 2 years in New York City doing interagency work, and then a year and a half in Afghanistan where I managed all of our undercover operations. And it was, dealing with some of the most important issues of the day was amazing. And you get real responsibility, real authority at a young age. And I got to, be in some crazy places. I lived in an abandoned building for a month in the Hindu Kush Mountains, chased Al-Qaeda all over the world, chased Iranian nuclear scientists.
And now you're in Congress.
Yeah. Look, it was when I was overseas, I knew what my enemies looked like. Up here, it's a little bit different. But the thing is the reason I ran for Congress was, in addition to collecting intelligence, I had to brief members of Congress. And to be frank, I was pretty disappointed with the caliber of our elected officials.
Were you more disappointed with one side than the other?
I probably briefed.
Or was it just uniform disappointment?
I probably briefed over 200 members. RSDs, men, women, all 50 states, and I was pretty shocked. And story, I was in Kabul, and a bomb goes off in front of the embassy, kills some local guards, takes out a section of the wall, and my unit was responsible for trying to figure out what happened. And we conducted a couple of dozen operations in a very short period of time. And we had a HIPSI briefing, the House Intel Committee, and standard operating procedure was business casual, right? I show up in tactical gear, and when I was overseas, I grew a beard. My hair was a lot longer than it is now. I wore local clothes, so I looked like a Taliban, right? My my media team's always like, "Do you have time? Do you have pictures when you're in the CIA?"
This is KT. He's
KT,
pretty
thanks,
awesome,
brother.
as
Really
are all of his colleagues.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you, dude. Thanks, KT. KT works in the Silver Spring Pete's.
Yeah. And I walk into this briefing, and the first thing I hear is this member of Congress saying, "Is the CIA going to cut this briefing short so we can get to the bazaar to buy rugs?" So I'm pissed, and we go into the briefing, and this ranking member, he had been on the House Intelligence Committee for over 6 years, asked a question. This is 2007, 2008 timeframe. He says, "Why is Iran not supporting the Taliban in Afghanistan the way they're supporting other groups in Iraq?" It's an okay question, actually pretty mediocre. And I started explaining the Sunni-Shia divide. And he raises his hand. He says, Will, what's the difference between a Sunni and a Shia? And I'm thinking he's getting ready to make a really inappropriate joke. And who am I to deny him this opportunity? So my response was, I don't know, Congressman. What's the difference? And I'm getting ready to do ba-dum-bum-bum, right? His face goes bright red. Didn't know that difference in Islam, right? And it's okay for my big brother not to know that because he sells cable. But for a guy who's sending our boys and girls to places like Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, unacceptable. And my mama said, you're either part of the problem, part of the solution. So I left Kabul, moved to Helotes, Texas, which is right outside San Antonio, and ran for Congress. I lost, but then started a cybersecurity company and then won 5 years later.
Fascinating. Now that you're up with policymakers and you can sort of work on the inside on the differences between the Sunni and the Shia, do you find that the level of ignorance in Congress has declined?
No, it hasn't. But the thing that I am shocked by is that my colleagues and folks that are unaware of these things try to seek information. You know, I've been shocked that, you know, I've been in Congress for 13 months, and the number of folks that have sought, you know, my background and experience. And so being able to leverage that has been pretty fantastic. And it doesn't always work. I've learned you can only introduce one new concept a week in order for people to get it and understand it. But it's an important piece when we talk, and having historical background. You know, the example I use, a lot of the conflicts that we're in now, whether it's Yemen or Syria or Libya, you have a model out there, and it's Afghanistan 2001. So on 9/11, I was in the CIA at 0200 that night, which would have been the September 12th. I get a phone call to say, hey, report to the basement of the old headquarters building in the CIA at 0600. I showed up. I'm one of the first employees in CTCSO. This is the Counterterrorism Center Special Operations. And we supported what was going on overseas in Afghanistan. And in December of 01, Kandahar fell. Kandahar was a city in southern Afghanistan, kind of the capital of Taliban. We had killed 2/3 of Al-Qaeda leadership, pushed all the Taliban out of the country. We did it with 400 Americans on the ground. 300 special forces, 100 CIA. We were able to do it because we had the world's greatest, the greatest Air Force the world had ever seen, and we were working with local groups, Northern Alliance, some Pashtun groups. Those dynamics exist in Syria, they exist in Iraq, they exist in Libya. But the question where we continue to get wrong is, what do we do after that?
Right.
How do we make sure that we have governments in place? How do we have systems? Because guess what? There's no Syrian Thomas Jefferson. They've been killed, right? And this is one of the problems, is finding the right people that are going to take over their countries and make sure they grow it onto where those countries should be.
Maybe they need an Alexander Hamilton. I know that joke's been made before, but the when you kind of look at this question of the world you come from, you sounded both frustrated inside, frustrated with Congress. There were people like Edward Snowden who were frustrated with what they saw. Dana Priest, one of our colleagues at the Washington Post, won a Pulitzer for writing that the industrial intelligence establishment had become so sprawling, so big, so unaccountable that it didn't even know the limits of its empire. Do you think that you're a person that can begin applying in any role the kind of oversight that world needs?
You're absolutely right. I was there. I've seen it. A lot of times, I think one of the areas that Congress has failed is in their oversight role. And part of that is because if you don't understand the thing in which you're providing oversight, how can you be effective on that? And so, a lot of times when it comes to cybersecurity issues, folks show up and they try to use all this technical mumbo jumbo, and a member's eyes roll in the back of their head. But I actually understand that mumbo jumbo, and by the way, you were using it wrong. So that's part of it, is to say, hey, let's get back to the basics. And a lot of times, one of the things that I've learned from coming out of human intelligence, you're not going to solve these problems with a computer alone. You have to be on the ground. You have to be in the back alleys. And, there's a lot of, one of the things that I love about being in this position is not only I get to represent my hometown of San Antonio, but I get to represent those men and women that are putting themselves in harm's way every single day. And if I can tell a quick story.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I speak to a lot of
Real quick.
Yeah, I speak to a lot of high schools and middle schools, and they always ask me like, did you almost ever get killed, or did anybody ever pull a gun on you? It's like, yeah, there's a number of times when, I thought my mama was gonna get a phone call they never wanted, and when you go to meet a spy and someone's giving you secrets, you got to make sure nobody's following you. And I go down an alley in a city I'd never been in before, and I thought it was gonna be vacant. But it was like a parade. It was a couple thousand people, pack animals. And I'm driving a little, like a Ford Escort. And I'm driving 3 miles an hour. This woman walks in front of my car. I mash my brake, roll over a flip-flop, and drag her foot across the concrete. Bust her toe wide open, and she looks in the car, realizes I'm not from around there, screams bloody murder. Hundreds of people banging on my car, shaking it. All right, our standard operating procedure: get off the X. All right, but my little Ford Escort wasn't getting me far. I had a concealed weapon, but not enough bullets, and so I do what they least expect me to do. I get out of the car.
You were about to be cooked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I unfold my 6'4" frame out of the car, and everybody was shocked because I'm like twice the size of everyone. And I knew some of the local language were not good enough, and I said, "Does anybody speak English?" And this little guy, I'm going to remember his face for the rest of my life, parts the crowd, and he goes, "I speak the English." And I said, "Sir, where's the closest hospital?" And he says, "A couple of blocks away." I said, "Fetch me a rickshaw." And I give some money to the woman. She gets in the rickshaw. They take off. The crowd starts clapping. They're patting me on the back. I'm in my car, and I'm driving away. And I look in the rearview mirror, and everybody's waving, right? And my heart is beating. And, I tell that story. It was great because guess what? I had, some eggs and bacon this morning. I'm drinking a nice vanilla latte. But there are thousands of men and women every single day putting themselves in harm's way in order to keep us safe, in order for us to be able to congregate and do what we're hearing do. And they need a voice up here in Washington, D.C. that understands what they're going through, and being able to play a role in that's pretty awesome.
Wow. Well, thank you for telling that story. So, ladies and gentlemen, I was going to go to questions, but I think it'd be more fun. You've got a few minutes to hang out a little bit, so let's go back to lattes and Cosmos and High Sizzle and come spend some time with the congressman and the senators, and we'll go there. So, ladies and gentlemen, Congressman Will Hurd, thank you very, very much.